Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm back again this morning. I told you I'd do another post. I thought I was going to be busy. I didn't realise how busy I was going to be, dealing with lots of other items I've dealt with. But I did promise you I'd be back, and here I am. And what I'm going to talk to you about is something that happened this Monday. Now today's Tuesday, so yesterday it happened, and I'll talk to you about it. It happened in Ireland. Yes, Ireland. So it's British, and it's the long-awaited forensic excavation of a former Roman Catholic mother and baby home. Mother and baby home. They weren't really for the mother and the baby. No, they were not. They found the excavation is where they found remains of up to almost 800 babies and children that are buried on the site, and it starts yesterday in the county of Galway. Many of the children who died at the institution in Tuam, Tuam, that's the area, the town, are believed to have been dumped into a former sewage tank known as the pit, according to local historian Catherine Corless. It was her painstaking research that uncovered the deaths of the 798 children at the home for unmarried mothers between 1925 until its closure in 1962. So it's historical, 1925 to 1961, but they haven't found. There's people waiting to find out if their babies, their mother's babies, what happened to them? What happened to them? And then it was discovered that nearly 800 babies have been found to have been killed there by nuns of the Roman Catholic order. Only 2 have been buried at a nearby cemetery, so the remaining 796 are presumed buried on the site, maybe in this pit. The historian, as I said her name, didn't I? She has said, Miss Corless, she has said she's feeling very relieved as the excavation started yesterday morning. It's been a long journey, she continued, not knowing what's going to happen, if it's just going to fall apart or if it's really going to happen. Miss Corley's findings in 2014 shocked Ireland and made headlines across the world. I remember them, but only vaguely. But I do. It does. I hadn't thought about it until now, but now it's been mentioned. Yes, I do remember the shock. But what Catholic nuns were doing with unmarried mothers and their babies. It exposed a dark underbelly of the mid-century Ireland, heavily swayed by Catholicism, and its cruel attitudes towards illegitimate children and the women who bore them. Often sent to mother and baby homes before being separated from their offspring, these young mothers were treated badly. A decade later, a team of investigators led by Daniel McSweeney is embarking on a forensic excavation that could last up to 2 years. The goal is to identify as many of the remains as possible through DNA testing, and it will give all they find dignified burials. It's a glimmer of hope for people like Annette Mackay. She who now lives in Manchester, her mother Maggie O'Connor, gave birth to a baby boy in the Tuam home in 1942 after being raped at the age of 17. So she wasn't a promiscuous young lady. She'd been raped at the age of 17. She gave birth to a baby girl. The girl, named Mary Margaret, died 6 months later. Annette remembers her late mother recalling how she was pegging out washing, and a nun came up behind her and said, "The child of your sin is dead." Wicked, wicked nun. None so wicked. Sorry, it's not a laughing matter. Annette now hopes that her infant sister's remains can be exhumed and laid to rest with her mother Maggie and they'll be reunited. Margaret will be reunited with her child. So Annette said, I don't care, it's just a thimble form, as they tell me there's not much remains left of a 6-month-old child. It's mainly cartilage more than bone. I don't care if it's only a thimble full for me to be able to pop Mary Margaret with Margaret, my mother, in her grave. Annette herself is now 71, so it's been going on for so long. She went on to say, we locked up victims of rape. We locked up the victims of incest. We locked up victims of violence. We put them in laundries. We took their children. We handed them over to the church to do with what they wanted, she said. Yes, they locked up the victim of rape. They locked up the victim of incest. They locked up the victims of violence because they didn't want to see it. The Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the governments of the time. Listen to this. My mother was heavily pregnant, cleaning floors, and a nun passing by kicked my mother in the stomach. And now that this place has been opened, their dirty, ugly secret isn't a secret anymore. It's out there. We need to know from that dirty, ugly place what happened there. So first and foremost, we want answers to take place. That was what Annette said. The Irish government made a formal state apology in 2021 after inquiry found an appalling level of infant mortality in Ireland's Roman Catholic mother and baby homes, concluding around 9,000 children had died in the 18 institutions it investigated. To a Sikh, or the Irish Prime Minister, Michael Martin, said at the time that we had a completely warped attitude to sexuality and intimacy, and young mothers and their sons and daughters were forced to pay a terrible price for that dysfunction. He's missed out that Margaret's mother was raped at 17, and several were. It was hidden. The Sisters of Bon Secur, that's the sisters being the nuns of Bon Secur. Bon, good, secure, security, good security, which ran the Tuam home, offered their profound apologies. Nice. Admitting the children were buried in a disrespectful and unacceptable way, and offered financial compensation. To whom? The mothers are no longer alive that gave birth and were treated so badly. As the dig could last for 2 years and starts at the Bon Secur site, the people at Tuam are still grappling with the contempt and neglect that occurred in their town. I'm still trying to figure that out, said Miss Corliss, the historian that revealed it all. I mean, these were a nursing congregation. Nursing congregation. The church preached to look after the vulnerable, the old and the orphans, but they never included illegitimate children, for some reason or another, in their psyche. I never ever understood, never understand how they could do that to little babies, little toddlers, beautiful little vulnerable children. Over a decade since the historian discovered the unmarked mass burials, I'm sorry. Over a decade since the historian discovered an unmarked mass burial site for children at the former mother and baby home in Western Ireland, workers finally began on Monday to prepare for the extensive excavations. A crew sealed off the site in Tuam, 135 miles west of Dublin. For those who work in kilometres, that's 220 kilometres. In preparation for the beginning of the dig for any remains next month. In 2014, local historian Catherine Corliss produced the evidence of the 796 children, from newborns to 9-year-old, who died in Tuam's mother and baby home. A 9-year-old died. Murdering babies as they were born. And a 9-year-old. What did that 9-year-old do to anyone? Please. Her research pointed to children's likely final resting place, a disused septic tank discovered in 1975. Significant quantities of baby remains were discovered in an apparently makeshift crypt at the site during test excavations between 2016 and 2017. Why had it taken so long? Since she discovered it in 2014, and here we are 11 years later. Why does governments and officials take so long? I've never understood. Well, I have understood. I worked for the city of Birmingham, and I went to an engineer's office to get some repairs done. And the head of the admin was sitting there at his desk. I knew him; he's a friend. And he said, "Oh, I've got to go off. I'll be back in about half an hour." And so I sat at his desk, and he'd got an in tray, a pending tray, a non-urgent tray, a semi-urgent tray, and an urgent tray. And so, while I'm sitting there getting a bit bored, the girls were watching me from the other administrators and clerks. I took the in tray and I filled them all in, finished it up, went into the non-urgent tray, finished those up, went into the intermediate tray, finished those up, finished off the urgent tray, finished those off, and didn't put them back in the tray, but put them in front. And when my friend came back, he said, "What's this?" And I said, "Oh, I've done your day's work." He said, "That's my month's work. Oh, now I'll have to have some more." That is why we wait so long. But I've gone off track, haven't I? The significant quantities of baby remains were discovered in an apparently makeshift crypt at the site during test excavations in 2016-2017. The home was run by Catholic nuns between 1925 to 1961, and the site was left largely untouched after the institution was knocked down in 1972. And it was Miss Corley's discovery of the unmarked burial site led to the Irish Commission of Investigation into the so-called mother and baby home. The findings, published in 2021, so 4 years ago, the Commission said there had been some disquieting levels of infant mortality at the institutions. Disquieting, disturbed our silence, our quiet space. It's been a fierce battle. This is Corliss speaking. When I started, nobody wanted to listen to me. At last, we're righting the wrongs. She's now 71, by the way. I was just begging to take the babies out of this sewage system and give them the decent Christian burial that they were denied, she said. Women who became pregnant out of wedlock were siloed into so-called mother and baby homes by Irish society and the state of the Catholic Church, which has historically held an iron grip on the Irish social attitudes. After giving birth at the homes, mothers were then separated from their newborn children or child and were often given up for adoption, but others were obviously murdered. The state-backed inquiries sparked by the discoveries in Tuam found that 56,000 unmarried women and 57,000 children passed through 18 such homes over the space of 76 years. They hid it they didn't want these young women to be seen. The Commission's report concluded that 9,000 children had died in the homes across Ireland. 9,000 children. If they'd have been allowed to grow up, how many children would they have had? How many were murdered, either physically there or prevented from being born in the future? We can't tell, can we? We can guess, but we can't tell. Often the Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the state worked in tandem to run the institutions which still operated in Ireland as recently as 1998. The team that's doing the excavations were finally appointed in 2023, but they're just starting in 2025. Again, as I've explained, I do understand, but it's hard for me to put it into words. The team's been tasked with recovering, memorialising and reburying any remains recovered at the site. Sample DNA will be taken from people who have reasonable grounds to believe the remains of those of a close relative. I'm finding it hard to speak, quite frankly. Now listen to this. In 2014, historian Catherine Corliss, now 71 of course, tracked down death certificates for nearly 800 children who died in the home at Tuam between the 1920s and 1961, but could only find one burial record for one child. The home, which was run by the Order of Catholic Nuns and closed in 1961, was one of many institutions that housed tens of thousands of orphans and unmarried pregnant women who were forced to give up their children throughout much of the 20th century. I've already said the sisters, the nuns at the home, have offered their profound apology and acknowledged they had failed to protect the inherent dignity of women and children housed there. It's a very, very difficult, harrowing story and situation. We have to wait to see what unfolds now as a result of the excavation, Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin said on Monday. Daniel McSweeny, who will lead the exhumation of the baby's remains at Tuam, said the survivors and family members will have an opportunity to view the works in coming weeks. What do you think? What do you think of the nuns? They were a caring organisation. Caring? Caring for what? They weren't caring for the mothers. They weren't caring for the babies. So who were they caring for? Reputation. Disgraceful. Horrific. Comments, please. But I'm not going to say anymore. It's upsetting. This is upsetting. So, comments. Subscribe to the channel. It doesn't cost you a penny, nor not even a cent. Not even a rupee. It's totally free. So smash that subscribe button. Give me your comments, please. If you can bring yourself to comment on this. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do another one tonight. There are things I want to bring to your attention, but it's upset me. It's upset me. So I'll say good night. Well, good day. It's 7:15 here in England. 7:15 in the evening. It's still bright and light. I've got the doors open, conservatory doors open. My whole house opens up at the back, and I'm sitting there. So it's warm, it's light, but this is so upsetting. This is so upsetting. So be good, be safe, and press the subscribe button. send your comments in. I like to read your comments. So until then, I'm going to say